Want to learn how to tell if someone is lying? Our GMW expert will share the tips to make you a human polygraph.
Okay, we are loving talking to Stephen Kyle with his new book, The Human Whisperer, Mastering the Art of Understanding, Connecting, and Influencing Others. Kyle runs the gamut of communication skills to help you become more effective in your personal and professional life.
He even examines the impact of lying, and he joins us this morning with how to better detect when someone is deceiving you. Maybe you're headed to holiday parties, company parties, the boss. This is all stuff that you can use this weekend as you head into the weekend. In fact, Stephen asked how we were doing this morning, and I said, I'm doing fine. And I looked down, and you said, I don't actually believe you.
Mm-hmm. Right. And he was lying. He's only doing okay this morning.
What was it about the way he responded, though, that made you say, yeah, he's not telling the whole truth?
Well, it was a deviation in tone. It wasn't anything specific, but the fact I've been watching him all morning on the show, and he's been very upbeat and very lively. And then he was talking to you very lively. And then as soon as I asked him how he was doing, it was all great conversation. And how are you doing, kid? Fine.
So he's an actor, essentially.
Or
no,
a
jerk.
No, because even off camera, he was still very animated with you.
Yeah.
But then when he answered how he was doing, he just wasn't as animated.
So we've always heard...
Stephen, I'd like to be having cocktails with you is what I wanted to say. That's
okay. That's the perfect answer.
Now we've gotten to the truth.
Okay.
We have heard, these little rule of thumbs, like, if somebody's eyes don't... If somebody doesn't look you in the eye, then they probably aren't telling the truth. Or if they're doing kind of like shifty things with their head or something like that, then they probably aren't telling the truth. Is there any truth to those, I guess, telltale signs?
Yes and no. As far as like the eye contact thing goes, that is something that is really overblown because it's such a common trope that liars can't look you in the eye. Liars can absolutely look you in the eye.
The good ones.
Eye contact is not a good indicator of deception.
Okay.
In fact, quite the opposite. Because liars know that liars aren't supposed to be looking you in the eye, they tend to make too much eye contact. So people that are lying to you will often stare at you just to make sure that they don't get accused of lying by looking away.
Scratching your head and face, is that anything?
That's a good one. When you tell a lie,
because I've always, it's like...
Yeah. Somebody will say something and then they'll scratch,
Right.
And there's a physiological reason for that. When you tell a lie, particularly a big one, your brain transmits catecholamine, which is a family of chemicals, into your bloodstream, which dilates the blood vessels at the surface of your face and nose. Well, all of your blood vessels, but particularly those around your face and nose, which is why when you tell a big whopper of a lie, you feel that sudden need to scratch that itch. So there is something to it.
Do people become flushed then when they're telling lies?
They can,
Okay.
but not always.
See, like my mother always knew
when you were
before
lying.
I even opened my mouth that I had done something wrong. She could just look at me. Maybe that's
so
just
commonly
moms.
bad.
What about legs? Do legs tell a story?
Well, when we talk about nonverbals of the legs and feet, the best indicator is, again, would be changes in baseline. If somebody is sitting talking to you and they're doing this, and you ask them a tough question and it stops, that's an indicator that they're at least not necessarily being deceptive, but they're anxious and nervous about the question. So you have to analyze what question you asked them that made them nervous, and if the answer is one that they would lie about, then deception may be indicated. But you want to look for those changes in baseline.
Interesting.
So stopping the fidgetiness might be the sign.
Or starting. If they're sitting like this and then they all of a sudden start, so you were looking for a change from their normal behavior.
All right, verbal cues that can help detect deception.
Well, there are several good ones. A couple I want to talk about. One of them is liars don't tend to use contractions.
What does that mean?
It means if I asked you, did you get drunk last night? A liar would be more likely to say, I did not get drunk last night. Okay. In fact, the famous example was Bill Clinton in his deposition when he said, I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
Right.
And the reason why liars don't tend to contract is because they want to emphasize the negation. I did not do that thing. It's really hard to emphasize the contracted. I didn't. It lacks the impact. A truth teller, they're going to want to emphasize what you're accusing them of. Okay, so if I asked you,
did I get drunk last night?
Did you get drunk last night? And you were telling the truth, you'd say, I didn't get drunk. I wasn't drunk. I didn't get. You're going to emphasize.
Right.
How about you?
Well, I did close.
Okay.
I had like 3 cocktails.
It doesn't take a human whisper to figure this guy out.
So the person who's actually telling the truth will emphasize whatever it is they're being accused of.
Correct. Absolutely correct.
Fascinating.
And another good verbal one, and this is great for all situations, whether you're talking to your child, your boss, friends, coworkers, you want to start with an open-ended question. Where did you go? What did you do? Run me through whatever the situation is that's not necessarily a yes or no answer, that has more room for an open-ended answer. You want to look for what we call text bridging statements where they're omitting parts of the story. For example, if I say, where'd you go last night? And you said, well, went to the movies, and then later on went to the bar. Okay, that immediately tells me you went to the movies, and then you said later on you went to the bar. That means you're skipping over a piece of the story. Now, that doesn't mean, again, you're being deceptive, but that means that I want to follow up on that part of it. So you want to look for text bridging statements like later on, and then after that, and sometime later we did, you want to look for those type of statements so you know where to circle back to in the course of it.
And you also have on here qualifiers. Is that when somebody says, I'm going to be honest with you? Or
Yes,
do they
yes.
reiterate the fact of I'm telling the truth?
Well, there are probably a dozen and a half types of qualifiers, and I've got them all in the book, but a couple examples where you're talking about, good ones are like oath qualifiers. I swear to God, this is what happened.
It's just like when somebody says, I've got a great story to tell you. It's usually not a good story. So, Stephen, thank you for coming in. Always great to see you. And where can people get your book?
Okay, Amazon.com.
Excellent. Buy it. It's a great talker and great right before the holidays.
Telling the truth.
Telling the truth.
Telling the truth.
Yeah,
That's
see?
absolutely true.
I actually have this book at my house from the last time you were here.
Thank
Okay.